Welcome to Philly Coco Presents Side Project Spotlight, Episode 15. This is a developer's journey to making cool stuff. We are your partners in this merry crime. I'm Kotaro.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are Philly Coco, a Philadelphia-based Coco Heads community focused on Apple development that primarily, but not exclusively, means iOS, Mac, tvOS, and watchOS development. Philly Coco's true desire is to take you higher on your own development journey. All right. A little bit sloppy there, but, always a work in progress.
We say it every time we record, but it's true every time.
Yeah, it is very true. That's how we like to do these podcasts. Very Kaizen.
Yeah. So what are we talking about this week then?
We are talking about our new project that we've decided, or a new side project that we've decided that we would want to do. And what is that side project, you say? We want to make a Mac app. I think that's been on my to-dos for a long time. I've never done it. And the funny thing is, when I got into Apple development in general, like getting into the Cocos framework, it was prior to iOS SDK ever coming out. So my primary goal was to make a Mac app from the beginning. That was during the Objective-C days with retain release, pre-arc, like all that jazz.
I think the closest thing to a Mac app I made was some kind of timer app for, I remember in college, some kind of club event where we needed some kind of, maybe it was a timer, maybe it was like a score counter or something, and it ran on my Mac, but I think I did an Apple script or something with a little UI, and I didn't know what I was doing at all. But that's the closest I came to a Mac app. So I'm with you on I've always kind of wanted to do it, but never tried before.
Yeah, and Aaron, I assume Mac apps were never even on the spectrum of what you were thinking about ever doing when you started this?
Yeah, probably. I guess I was thinking about mainly iOS stuff, but it has been something I've been interested in trying out since they came out with all the cross-platform stuff that makes it a lot easier.
Right. Yeah, that was my thinking too. That the cross-platform stuff makes it more appealing to try to do this.
Now, let's preference with this with the concept of what cross-platform we're referring to, much less what the average developer would assume we were talking about. And this is strictly between iOS and macOS.
Yeah, no Android or Windows or web.
Nothing against them. But
any of the platforms that make up the majority of people's computing lives.
Yeah, so we're still within the Apple ecosystem.
Almost said echo chamber there, didn't you?
Yeah, well, what's the old, a Freudian slip there?
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna stay Apple fanboys for now.
Yeah, sorry guys.
Yeah, we bring on the guests. The guests are the ones that give us the perspective outside our bubble.
Yes. Yeah, shout out to you, Arpit and Sean. We appreciate you greatly.
Definitely.
So I think the easiest thing we had thought about doing, and it's kind of one of those things where I had wanted for a fair amount of time. I think we sort of came to this conclusion of like, hey, you know what? Let's just keep it simple, because we all have, more or less day jobs, that's taking up a good chunk of our time nowadays. What's the easiest thing we can build? And typically on the Mac App Store, the typical app, the hello world of, that world is to-do lists. So that's what we're going to build.
Another to-do list app.
Another to-do list. Currently speaking, for the two of you, how do you do, if you have your own to-do list, like what is your to-do list process if you have one?
My to-do world is kind of split in two. And at work, I think it's called Microsoft To Do now. I think that's what they call it. Because I'm trying to use all the technology that's in the Office 365 world, because that's what the work subscribes to and has all the appropriate kind of security, set up, so all the data is secure, that kind of thing. So I use that and some other Microsoft tools, and that's actually a pretty good to-do app for that. And the rest of my life, though, I tend to use OmniFocus. I've been doing that for years, although I have somewhat fallen off the wagon of GTD and need to get back on. But for a while there, I was very much into GTD, and I still am when I doing it right.
So for anybody who doesn't understand, what is GTD?
It's getting things done. That's what it stands for. It's based on a book by David Allen. It's a particular methodology for basically productivity, for organizing your projects and to-dos and things. And it doesn't require an app. In fact, the original book, it has nothing to do with apps. But the idea is you have, you're supposed to dump all of your possible ideas. I'm going to overly simplify this. You're supposed to dump like everything out of your head into your trusted system in the form of projects, and then projects have next actions, which are the to-dos. So you're always supposed to have at least one item in there, which is the next thing to do to accomplish that. And then he had a whole concept in GTD, which of like context, and in that respect, it was stuff from like things I can do if I have my computer, or things I can do like on my phone, or so the idea is you'll be able to be somewhere and be able to figure out what you can do based upon where you are and what resources you have and stuff. And people have taken that over the years and evolved it into more elaborate systems of tagging. And different people have different ways of tagging their stuff based on energy, or based on technology, or based on whatever. So you can go out there, but essentially it's just a methodology for keeping track of stuff. And then I also use a calendar a lot too. So a calendar is like my concrete, world. Like things on my calendar are hard aspects of my like landscape. So like they're commitments that I'm making to myself. So they're non-negotiables for the most part. Like I put it on the calendar. That's something that I'm going to do. Of course, I'm not 100% with abiding by that, but that's the idea behind it. So a combination of your calendar and your to-do system. And then also in GTD, you also have the concept of how to file things. So you can find them later, and they have like a concept of I think the tickler file is in there. So you'd be able to find things when you need it on a certain date. So there's like a bunch of things that come together to create one system. And I think David Allen was I think he's a consultant. And so he would I think this kind of came about from talking to, like I think business owners or CEOs or something like that, like those types of people that have all this stuff to keep track of and work. And it became a really big thing on the internet. I don't know how long ago, more than a decade ago. It was huge. There was lots of website stuff, you remember. But OmniFocus is the app that I used. It's one of the most flexible, maybe the most flexible to-do app on, I think maybe any operating system, definitely on the Mac, because you can have projects and to-dos and tags and all kinds of features in there, and you can have all kinds of views of your database, and it can get very complex.
I mean, I remember when it was in its early phases, how lightweight and efficient it was to do a lot of simple like to-dos. I know now when I look at it nowadays, I'm like, whoa, this is this is some complex looking UI.
Yeah, they're in the process of redesigning it too for a new version, and I'm on the beta for the at least on the iOS side, and it's been changing a lot. And yeah, they have a lot of competition too. There's a lot of big apps in the store that are sort of GTD like, but not nearly as complicated. Like they're more opinionated. OmniFocus is great once you get your system locked down to work for you and you choose your perspectives. And I don't want to go into too long of a thing about OmniFocus today, but because that could be his whole episode. But that's what I used to use. So is OmniFocus for most of my life, and then for work stuff, I try to just use the Microsoft thing, which is way, way simpler. Like Microsoft To Do is essentially projects, and they have to-do items, and then the to-do items can have sub-items in them if you want, and that's essentially it. But it kind of links into Office 365, so if you have an email, you flag an email, it'll become a to-do, and if you have stuff in a planner, which is a different product, that can become a to-do. If it's assigned to you, it'll show up. So Microsoft set up their system so that their to-do app is kind of the central place you can go to kind of see what tasks you have, but it doesn't have nearly the level of flexibility that something like OmniFocus has to actually look at them. It's just, you want to keep it to a small number of lists of things. Otherwise, it gets pretty easy to get lost.
Gotcha. What about you, Aaron? Do you have any way to track your things you need to do per day or per week or whatever?
Other than a calendar, not really. So maybe that's my problem. I'm gonna get this app done. Help me get more things done.
Yeah, I try to be good about it, but I find myself, like, particularly if we were talking about calendar based like workflows, like I don't I have reminders to like, say for example, pay a bill at a certain date. But in terms of like just overall, like, here are, like, I try to just say, okay, here are the 3 to 4 core things I need to do that day. And I kind of have like a bullet point in my notes app of, like, for each day of this week, this is how I'm planning it for that week. Like, this is my general guideline, and then, like, I check off if I do it or not, and then I'm sure there's a name for this technique, but it's just basically easier for me to, like, grok, and you're always looking for those endorphin enhancing, like, moments of, like, okay, I check this, I check this, I check this, yay, my day is complete.
You kind of stumbled onto the pickle jar theory of time management, which we haven't even talked about yet, but that's kind of our idea of our app here is to do some kind of implementation of the pickle jar theory, because that's what it is. I mean, what you just described is you pick, like, these activities and you like 3 or 4 big activities, and I can go. Should I just go into the explanation of what it is real quick?
Like I know you've explained it to me several times, and I'm sort of like, it's still, like, slowly, like, seeps in the back of my dumb brain. But
okay, so the idea is, imagine a pickle jar. And why a pickle jar? I mean, I don't know. Because I had this. So Chrissy, she's like, why is it a pickle jar? And I'm like, we got this whole tangent about the jar. And it's like, it's not important that it's a pickle jar. It's just, I think that's just because it's a jar everybody has. It's big enough for this to work. I was like, it was like a 15-minute sidetrack on the. So maybe when you're choosing metaphors for your time management, be careful. But anyway, imagine you have a jar, pickle jar otherwise. Sure. It doesn't have pickles in it. It's empty. You've eaten all the pickles. Okay. And you're going to, this pickle jar is kind of symbolizing your amount of time you have, maybe like in a day, for instance, but in a physical space. So now you're going to fill up this space, or fill up your time, and you're going to do it in a certain order. You're going to pick rocks. You're going to put rocks in there, like big rocks, and then you're going to put pebbles in. Then you're going to put sand in, and then you're going to put water in. And they each represent different things. So the rocks are the most important tasks you have to do during a workday, and like long-term goal stuff. Then you have the pebbles, which are like they're higher level than sand kind of tasks, but they can be postponed or delegated. Sand is like trivial tasks, social networking, chatting with people, whatever. And then water is your personal life, friends and family. And so if you imagine how you fill a jar, if you do it in that way, you can fill a jar all the way up, right? If you do it the other way, like if you put in a bunch of water first or a bunch of sand first, then you try to put rocks in, you won't have enough room for those things. So that's their idea, that you prioritize things in this particular way.
Wait, where does a pickle come in?
Right. No, that's really funny, because I so when we were discussing this, and then I went to look it up again to make sure I remember what it was, because I used to actually do this. This was my time management for every day was a pickle jar thing. I would, just like you, I would say, what are my 3 things or 4 things I want to do today? They're my pickles. And that's how I used to think about it. But then I go and I look it up online, and it's like, no one has pickles in it. They just have the jar. so there's no pickles in it. But in my mind, I always used to think that it literally was pickles, and the pickles were my tasks. But I mean, technically, they're supposed to be rocks in their metaphor. But it doesn't really matter. The whole point is, it's just it's a way of putting your goals into and activities into kind of a hierarchy, so that you're effectively using your time wisely, but still making sure that you have time for everything, including your friends and family and stuff. But
I think one of the funny things or interesting things is, like, the technique I use doesn't account for time, so it's just a task, a glorified to do to do list, but it's not binded by time or a constraint of time of like saying I need this done, I need this done in in 3 hours or something like that, or I'm gonna like figure that part out. But what makes that tough is identifying like what is the thing that is taking up too much time. Like what's this thing that's just been constantly like I have it on my to-dos, right? Every day of the week or something like that. Is it like there's no context for any of these to-dos, right? And so some of the like trying to finish them, if I don't check them off, right, then it becomes a really bizarre thing, because then your endorphins kind of get like, you don't get the endorphin of like, oh, I've completed all 3 of these things per day, right? Maybe for some reason you miss one of the items, right? Like you didn't get your stamps from the post office or something.
I mean, I don't know if we want to go too much into all the theories of these things. We could be talking about this all day, but
sure.
For me, the most important thing about any kind of productivity system is that it is a trusted place to put my tasks and such, because I want to get them out of my head, and that's a core part of GTD. That's where I got this from. But if I don't have these to-dos, these projects stuff somewhere trusted place that I know I am going to look when I need to. So it's like, it's not just in a to-do app, it's in an app that I'm regularly checking, or that's somehow going to remind me at the appropriate time for these things. So this way it's out of my head and I can relax and focus on the moment or the thing I'm doing. So if I'm going to go and spend time with my family or something, I'm going to go and go to a concert, I'm going to do something fun, I don't have these thoughts running in my head about stuff that I have to do tomorrow or something at work, because it's okay. I can let it go. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to have it running in short-term memory, because, otherwise I'll forget, because I wrote it down in my trusted system and I know I'm going to, be reminded about it or see it like when I need to, the next day or whenever. And so I think a good productivity system is actually important. It doesn't mean you have to go do any particular one, but I think it is important to have something if you're kind of a busy person, because, time is our most limited resource.
Sure.
And we don't want to waste it. But that doesn't mean that you want to spend all of your time working or something, or like necessarily every single second has to be scheduled or anything like that. But it just means that we all have different tasks that we have to do. We have different, importance to the different projects we have in our lives. And I think it's important that we try to be somewhat efficient about it, so that we can, we can actually live according to our hierarchy of values here, what our priorities actually are. And it's hard to do that if you're just kind of willy-nilly, doing tasks.
I mean, one thing I would find quite fascinating, because I know, like I kind of reset these to-do checkboxes every week. Like I sort of look at them, kind of get a general idea of like, okay, I did this well, I didn't do this well. Let's see if we can do better next week. But I never record like my performance. So it'd be kind of nice to see like some stats or some general, like, you've been talking about doing this particular item for weeks and you still don't check it off, like 80% of the time you're not checking it for whatever reason, right? Like that's like a smoke to a fire kind of thing. Like something there you need to correct.
There's a lot of there's systems that kind of let you look retrospectively back. It's kind of important to know whether you've accomplished things or not in a particular day. But I was thinking about it, and I don't know if there's some that are like calendar based that I think are more aligned with the idea of what did I plan to do today and what did I actually accomplish today, and then setting up the next day based on that. But I don't know of ones, and it doesn't mean they don't exist, but I don't know of ones off the top of my head that have that real retrospective like statistics of how much you've gotten done, in some way, if that's what you're looking for.
I guess like a good example would be something that's routine, right? So like, let's say, just a generic example, you said, you know what, I'm going to do 25 push-ups a day. All right. That would be like, that's my task, right? And once I do it, I check it off, I move about my day, right? That's a daily routine that you have on repeat. And if you don't do it, it's no harm, no foul. You just don't check that off, right? But over time, when you look at it, it's like, okay, I accomplished this. If this is something that I had planned on as a discipline, right? Versus like maybe it's a one-off. It would be good to know like if that stat is of those things that I task myself to do every weekday or every day, whatever. Do I do it or do I not? And do I need to change the habit so that I will do it?
Yeah, so that sounds a lot like the app Streaks.
Yeah,
if you've seen that, like, and that is kind of like it's kind of task management. It is to do technically, right? But that's, I think, more about recording, like you're saying, accomplishing some kind of habit you're trying to build.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the different kinds of systems and theories can take into account habits differently. In GTD, actually, if I remember correctly, like if you have a habit, it's not something you actually need to put in your to-do app. Like if you don't need to put in there that you're gonna like walk your dog every morning because you just regularly do that. It's like it's part of your routine. So things that are in your routine, you don't actually need to have them in your to-do system because they're just part of your routine. But sometimes it could make sense to do so. Like in your case, even if it's something it's part of a routine, you still want to track it for other reasons. Like exercise is a great one where I track exercise because that's a great one I want to see retrospectively, and that's kind of a to-do because it's something on my schedule and you kind of want to check it off per se. So it's hard when we're trying to figure out a to-do list. I think this is why there's so many of them in the store, right?
Sure.
Like, what does that mean? Because there's all kinds of different, like, formalized systems, informal systems. People have different ideas of what counts as like a project or a task, or even what terminology to use and what their goals are. So for us, what is like the goal here? I mean, I remember our original discussion right after we recorded the last podcast, which is why I wasn't in there, was kind of focused around Kotaro, how you said, like you were saying here, you wanted to have some kind of historical analysis, I guess, of whether you've accomplished these things or not. Like, what are you hoping to gain from that insight? Just to know if you're on track or if you're being lazy? Like,
I mean, that's the hard part, right? Like, I think sometimes there's this like weird notion, like there's a tendency for like you look at how bad you're performing and like that's going to discourage you from like ever. And it's like I've never been good at this, so I'm gonna give up now. To build these habits, right? Like you're trying to build better habits is what those particular types of to-dos are for. Where you're trying to say, okay, if I want to like stretch for an hour, or I want to do push-ups or do some kind of active exercise. There are other tools that are better for that. But again, like a lot of times, I end up still using notes or something just generic as a tool for me. So this is kind of one of those things. Like, well, I could continue using that app, and it will do more or less what it can do with the limit that you're given. But that's sort of the curse of being a developer, is that you always go, well, I can just build one myself and build it to the way that I want it.
So I'd say for us, we need to decide somewhat of what the scope of, or what we mean by a to-do app in this case. Like, is it more like Streaks, which is a great app and that already exists in the App Store, or is it more like Omnifocus? It's like I feel like there are the two extremes in my mind for some reason.
I guess it comes back to like what kind of story we have for ourselves, right? What is like I get the idea, like, because there's so many to-do apps on the App Store, right? Like, I don't expect us to win the Apple Design Award or get millions of downloads or whatever, unless we give it away for free, but that's a different problem.
Yeah.
I want it to be sort of an app that we can say, I use it. This is for me, right? So I think the three of us more or less have to agree on what would make this app useful to us and not worry about the externalities of other people's needs. Because in the end, this is an app that is meant for our particular workflows. That's the way I'm looking at it. Not necessarily what you might agree with, and you never know, like that particular process might be agreeable to a lot of people.
Yeah, I feel like that's how most of these apps got started. same way.
Yeah, like I mean, like the grocery app is a great example of like it's a very well designed app by Arpit, grocerytimer.app, by the way.
Yeah,
but it includes a lot of things that are overkill in a lot of ways, even by Arpit's standard. But because he was able to dog food it with his family, it got better because of that.
Okay, so what would make it useful for you, Kotaro?
It's got to be lightweight. I think when we talk about Mac apps, I appreciate it for the fact that I have a big screen that I can like enter all this information in and kind of get a grok of access to maybe better reporting tools that will tell me my patterns in nice fancy graphs or whatever. And then but also be cross-platform so that if I have my iPhone, I can just review the stuff real quickly and then either swipe left or right to say whether I did it or I didn't do it, or I'm sorry, whether I did it or whether I did it. If I did it, check it off. If I didn't, whatever, like it'll just save for that particular day, like my progress. I think the way I'm looking at it is like maybe we have tasks that are repeatable. So like every day, let's say a push up a day or something. That could be an everyday thing, right? As a task. And I just check it off. Yep, I did it. No, I didn't. Right. Not no, I didn't. Like if you don't do it, then you could just ignore it. But the point is like I can say I took a walk for 10 minutes. Tap, it gets updated. Maybe we'll use like something like Core Data CloudKit Sync.
Mm-hmm.
That'll give us an opportunity to learn how that would work in the context of a Mac to an iOS app.
Mm-hmm.
I've debated on this idea. Maybe we include an iPad, but I really don't. It's not a necessary thing in my mind, even though we could possibly do it if it's easy enough.
Yeah, once you check that box, you can never uncheck it, though. I made that mistake. You're supporting iPad forever. Unless they change something, you can never go back.
I mean, we can. I don't mind doing it. The implementation shouldn't be dramatically too different from how we implement the Mac version.
Yeah. It sounds like you're looking for a way to track things you're trying to turn into habits or things that you're just trying to do regularly on so not necessarily a general purpose to do app for your work, but like things like habits and things are scheduled. Like, would you use it for your place, your notes system where you have your actual tasks for the day for work, or is this going to be like a supplement and it's more like for habit forming in your mind?
For me, I would like it to be for habit forming, but I also want to allow for like one-offs. I mean, the one-offs is like the core of like the default of like pick up the groceries.
So like reminders, but like not the. I don't want to be. I don't want badmouth my reminders because I mean I use it and everything, but I'm not a huge fan of the actual interface of reminders, and I never use it. Sure. I use reminders all the time just for like I ask Siri to do stuff, but I don't actually use the app itself. If you've seen it since I redesigned it,
I same as you. I only use Siri reminders. I only use it interface with it via Siri.
Yeah, I mean it's better. The redesign was better, but it's not. I can't find myself using it, and I know people do use reminders. Like Chris uses reminders for stuff, and it's also she's more of a quote unquote normal person, right? Not like a developer. Also doesn't use the app directly like that. I feel like there's just something about the UI it just seems too complicated, even though it's not.
Oh crap! You just reminded me. Speaking of reminders. We might have to add a Siri intent. Aaron, for reminding ourselves. So I'm going to ask you to implement that part.
I already had it. I already had it in the back of my mind that we need to do that. So
awesome.
So I mean, I would agree with you, Kotaro. it doesn't sound like we're maybe necessarily going to do much about with the pickle jar theory anymore. But who knows? That's why we're talking about this. But
I guess the question is, we can associate the rock, sand, and water to categories.
Maybe we can make this. Maybe we can figure out the metaphor so it works with. But I agree with you. I like the idea of something that is helping to track with that kind of thing. This kind of what are we going to call this? Recurring task, habit forming things. Because I know that the apps like this exist. We mentioned Streaks as one of them, but that doesn't mean we can't make our own. Because for me, I'm just trying to get back into OmniFocus again. But my thing is, I have a lot of projects that are between like a day job, 2 companies, personal projects of all sorts. Like I have dozens of projects that are active, and like I need a complicated kind of database-based system like OmniFocus in order to track that stuff and make sure that I get reminders and things at certain times. So I don't think I'd want to replace that or try to build something to replace that, because that took, team of people. I don't know how many years has OmniFocus been in existence. Like that's not an easy thing to replace. But, something to better track. Like those kinds of things. I like the idea of the historical, pattern reporting, because that's something that I haven't been able to find. Arpit had asked on Twitter, right? Wasn't it Arpit?
Yep.
Who asked on Twitter about, was there a way to to-do app that could tell you the things you actually accomplished, right? Something like that.
Yeah,
you had actually checked off.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of one except OmniFocus. You can do it where you can make a view of your data, and you can kind of see stuff that you did, that you finished. It's kind of basic, and it doesn't give you any kind of like graphs or statistics or anything. So I like that idea because I am a big fan of recording data about all kinds of stuff, from when I exercise, my food, my health stuff from my watch. And I like looking at the historical trends and seeing how they're changing.
I mean, one thing that I guess would be kind of nice, but I'm not sure how important, is like if you record whether or not you say when you press I finished this task. It's very rarely done, say I've done it today or I've done it yesterday or something like that. Whether or not we should record when you actually done the task or when you recorded you done the task.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
So I guess that's more of a question than it is necessarily like a strong opinion about that. So like, say like I did my 1 push-up for the whole, per day, and then I come back, look over it a week later, I'm like, yeah, I did that. Tap, 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 tap. Technically, should that be recorded that you did it that day? Which in theory, that would be right, because you set it for that day, versus like when you've recorded that you've done it. Or like when you've actually confirmed that tap. So those are the things that we would probably have to figure out as we go about this app idea.
Yeah. So, Aaron, what about you? So I think Culture and I are pretty much on the same page of what would be useful to us. What about you?
Yeah, I guess I didn't want to like derail this whole thing into a thing about my like fitness training stuff for like marathons and triathlons, and like that's the thing that I use like the most like structured organization stuff for, but I haven't done an event in 2 years, so, and I don't have any planned, but there's like all kinds of stuff that kind of does the kind of things with stats and things like that, and what you've done and what you plan to do specifically for training. Like I use an app called Training Peaks, and it plans all your stuff, and it's and has a whole thing of like what's planned and what you actually did, and you can look at your like weekly stats and your monthly stats and your yearly stats, and you can make a whole annual plan and stuff like that. But I was kind of looking at that as like, I could use some of the types of views and things, and that are some of the ideas for stats for something more general.
Oh yeah, that's cool. That's a good idea. So one thing that you talk about in GTD and other systems is you take different levels of looking at your projects and stuff, like different, like 50,000 foot level. I don't remember the specifics of all of them, but you look at from the highest level, like what are my like life goals, to like what are my goals in a year or a few months, or and you do it that way, and or some things are just on a someday maybe list, where it's like, and then the idea is you just kind of check that every once in a while to see if you want to make it something that's more active. But actually, a tool to help plan that is something that I've tried different ways from paper to like node maps to like all kinds of things. Try to figure out how do I figure out and how do I track my larger scope plan? Like if I have a career goal or something and I want to be somewhere in so many years, how do I track that and like be able to see it in some way regularly in a way that's going to remind me of this stuff or help me stay on track of it or help me see that I have to accomplish certain things. Like it's hard because you do something like you can basically do anything in OmniFocus if you try hard enough, but it doesn't have like the visual interface for that kind of thing. Like I've tried just making a list of like, here's some goals for this. And it just, I mean, I think that could be useful as if I'm understanding you, Aaron, like this idea of trying to track the data and maybe try to set larger goals and track them that way. Like I think there's a niche there of maybe a little bit higher level than like every single task you need to do every single day. And like, a little bit higher than that, like goals.
When we think about it, do we think about it as a project? Like say, for example, like in Jira, our favorite project management software, there's this idea about epics, right? Like if you have something like a big feature that you need to build, but you want to task that, so you create like subtasks for that epic ticket, that epic story. Of like, okay, I want to build a settings view. Now add the task for like account info, password changing, links to marketing, whatever, right? You create subtasks. Is it something like that in that regard, or is that something that we should consider? Or what type of metaphor should we go with? Because I'm thinking in similar terms like that, where I'm going, okay, like, do I want to make a long to-do list of all the things I needed to do and then maybe tag them or categorize them in some sort of fashion? Or do I want to do projects? Kind of similar like To-Do, I think, the To-Do app.
Yeah.
Or is it the To-Do app or Things? I forget. There's so many.
Things is a To-Do app. It's like a GTD based one that's a little bit more opinionated than OmniFocus. It's actually very popular. It's a nice UI.
I do like it. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's the thing about this stuff. I don't think we're going to try to create one app to replace everything. But
no,
as I said, I use multiple apps now, and it can be done. You just have to think about what level of granularity you need, maybe. And then there's a whole question of, does this integrate at all with your calendar? Because that's something that that you can do that is somewhat useful. I do it on OmniFocus, has a view of your calendar with your tasks, and like fantastic how it does that with reminders. That can be useful. Some people, that's what they do for their to-do. I'm not saying we should do this, but some people, their whole system is to put to-dos on the calendar. So like based on days, kind of like what I think you're describing, Kotaro, where you're like, I need to do something this particular day, but they'll actually plan out maybe a little bit more than you are and put it on the calendar.
I think the annoying thing about calendars,
there's so many things,
is but like just notifications in general. Like I don't know if I want things popping up constantly, like you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, and it's just like, now I'm less motivated. So like I'm being nagged, and it's like, I don't know if that's what I want, right? Like I don't want to be notified that I have stuff to do, even though technically speaking I should be, right? Like you're trying to like force yourself to be better, but is that going to just do the opposite and just like force you into some paralysis?
Instead of notifications to get things done, the app could just be notifications of accomplishment. Something like that. So notifications could be happy things you get instead of annoying things. So when you get a notification from the app, it's like, hey, you've accomplished your goals for this month. And here, it's like when you're on the Apple Watch, you accomplish a fitness goal, and it gives you like a little award.
But that would be kind of a passive thing. Like if you say, I'm going to do 25 push-ups, like, obviously the watch app can figure that out if you've done your 25 push-ups, but that would be something we'd have to code into the app.
No, I
Versus,
mean, like you check it off, and then
check
but
it
you don't
off.
get a notification until you've actually accomplished everything.
Oh, I see. I mean, it would be kind of nice to get a summary. Like, say for example, like a widget. I mean, we're going like past our like ideal feature creep.
No, I'm just saying, try to put in like features. Notifications are not annoying. So yeah, something like a summary data. That'd be good. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Even as a widget, that would be actually quite ideal, right? Of like you going, hey, you've done these so far. Here's you've accomplished these tasks.
I have an app that does heart data analyzing from the app from HealthKit, and it has monthly reports, and it gives me a notification when they're ready. So that's what I'm thinking of. So something like that where it's like, oh, here's how you've done on what you decide, what you said your goals or projects, whatever we're going to call them, for the last month or something, and then it gives you notifications. So instead of notifications always being about this is due tomorrow, whatever, and then you get that whole annoying aspect of notifications, maybe we don't focus on that. Maybe we just focus on notifications are just like summary info, or or things you really explicitly say, I really want you to do this. But I like the idea. Then way notifications that come from the app are about accomplishments or about information that's useful for us in planning, and not necessarily like annoying us. So, and the same thing, widgets.
I'm remembering when we were having our first conversation about this idea, and it was like I was thinking that not just the notifications, but the default view of the app is stuff that you've already done. And it's so when you open the app, you're not confronted with like, oh, I have to do all this stuff. It's like, oh, here's what I did. Here's what I accomplished, I don't know, in the last day or the last week. And then, you can go and look at what you have to do, but it's more about reminding yourself like, oh yeah, I did stuff. I got stuff done already.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that happens with all these to-do things, and I think one of the reasons you get demotivated after a while is because you look at these apps and there's just endless lists of stuff to do. If you're not really careful with how you organize it, or the app doesn't try to restrict that view so you're not overwhelmed, it can just be demotivating. Like, oh man, I have like all 1,000 things to do. And how, but I like that idea. Maybe you go in the app and says, look at all you have accomplished this year. Actually, I imagine something like at the end of the year, you know how you can do something on Spotify or Apple Music and get like your year in review? Like we can have a year in review. Here are your goals. Here are your rocks, your pickles, whatever you chose that you wanted to accomplish this year. Like, I mean, so I did this I talked about it last time when I wanted to do my podcast. I went into Omnifocus and I created like a list of goals in there. And this is what I mean when I said I tried this in different projects. It didn't really work too well because all it was a list in OmniFocus, but it was a list. It was like, I wanted to do X number of podcasts. I wanted to do this and whatever. And like, that's the kind of thing we could track too. So,
oh, that would actually be cool. Yeah, that would be really cool. Mm-hmm.
Because every time you do it, you check it off and it's towards the goal. And then at the end, you get a summary, of how much you accomplished. So I like that because I want something that helps me motivate me.
Yeah. To bucket list.
Or bucket list, yeah.
Instead of pickle jar.
Yeah, whatever works, yeah. I like that. I like that checking off towards a goal,
Yeah, that's pretty good. I like that. So I think we should probably discuss to some level of scope, but understand our timeline as well. That's probably like we have limited capacity, so we have to figure out like how like what our MVP should be, right? So I think we have like our not North Star, but like our general idea of what we want our MVP to look like, which is, sort of like it still can be to have the features we've sort of talked about, but sort of like have the focus of the app be much more about I guess a positive sort of version of like a to-do list. The challenge is like, okay, WWDC is coming up and we don't know what they're going to throw at us. So we want to be relatively in good shape by that time. So in theory, we probably want to try to release it before WWDC, which I think this year is June
6th, I think.
6th. Doing on the fly Google.
Yeah, it's June 6th. It's that week of June 6th.
Okay. So that gives us a month and a half. Let's say a month and a half, almost 2 months. Let's say a month. Let's give ourselves about a month and a half. This is a month and a half project, which is pretty short, very short, actually, especially for the vision that we're going for here. But we are 3 senior developers ish
who have combined 4 hours of time a week. You know, it's like
combined 4 hours of time.
No, I mean, yeah. I think something. I think the goal should be something before WWDC. Ideally, released in the store, but even if it was just like usable test flight, I would be happy because, yeah, I'm the same. I have the same concern that WWDC might completely derail us in the sense they might do some kind of big AR thing or whatever, and then we're like, okay, we gotta focus on that for the next project, and then we don't want to be too far behind. On the other hand, though, usually the betas that come out of WWDC are, not something I even use for a while. So I feel like, like we might have some extra time there depending on how stable betas are, because I don't install the betas on my phone right away. And Xcode Xcode's were so bad for so many months after WWDC last time that I couldn't even use it for Swift UI. So it's possible we we'll want to do something post WWDC, but won't be able to get to it for a month or so anyway. But yeah, let's aim for something to be releasable by Dub. So that's a goal. That means
the app has to be good enough to help us prioritize this project with the WWDC projects afterwards.
Yes, I like that. That gives us a scope right there.
Yeah, right there.
You know,
right. It has to be help us
prioritize WWDC work. That's funny.
That's funny. All right, good. Yeah, I like this idea. I really do. Okay, so now that we've sort of gave ourselves a solid side project deadline for this particular app, deadline WWDC 2022. Anyway, now we say, okay, well, how do we break this up in chunks of 2-week sprints, right? Which is what our normal flow is. Like right now, just to give context for our viewers, we've already sort of identified that the to-do list app was what we were going to do. And we were going to say it was going to be Mac and iOS cross-platform. We were going to do it in Swift UI. We already have a Git repo set up, so we have the code base, the source code, like a basic project source code ready to go. We also have a Trello board. That's our project management tool that we use, which is great. We've started that up. We've already put in some basic cards just to get us going. We even have a shitty Pickle Jar app icon, which is hilarious. Hopefully, Steve, I don't know if you can put that in.
Oh yeah, I want to put it in the as the art. Yeah, it'll be the artwork. So hopefully your podcast app will show it. Like if you have Overcast, it'll definitely show it.
Yeah, for that part. So we have it's glorious. It's glorious. A high recommendation for anyone who doesn't have time to build. It's one of my personal things that I like to do is like in order for me to sort of solidify that this is an app that I'm going to build. I usually make a really crappy app icon to start. And put it in the app and put it in the project just so I see it. And it's just like, it just gives me this idea of like, oh, this is real, A. Mm-hmm. And then B, I need to fix that icon.
Yeah.
So
it's better than the default icon you get for an app.
Yeah. Because you can be pretty sloppy about that, right? So now we have to sort of, if we're breaking this up into 2 weeks, 2-week sprints, how many sprints does that give us altogether? So let's say we have from here to May 1st as one sprint. And then the next sprint would be May 1st to the 15th. That's 2 sprints. And then the 15th to the 29th, that's 3 sprints. And then the 29th to what would be past WWDC, which would be the 12th of June. So 4 sprints. So let's just say, just to round it off, 4 sprints. We'll round up to 4 sprints, which means like we'll be by the 4th sprint, we should have a very strong prototype, regardless of what happens in WWDC. I think it will give us that much.
Yeah, so by the fourth sprint, strong prototype.
Yeah, strong prototype, which of course will break in the betas, but whatever. The goal being is that we will have a strong prototype for which then we can share on test flight. If you join the Philly Coco Slack group, you'll be able to try it out for yourself.
You know, given the timeline, I feel like what we're going to end up doing is we're going to really focus that scope down, and you're going to hear about that in the next episode. Because I feel like because I'm thinking about what I already put in the Trello, which is like all these potential features are just out the window now because we've we're already refocused somewhat from that, and we're going to have to go down to just super core stuff because one of the things, the main goals of this is to learn macOS development. That means, by implication, we do not actually know how to make Mac apps. So like we have a learning curve. Like at least on the watch side, it was pretty much a version of iOS-y stuff, and we've done iOS apps. Yeah. But since none of us have done macOS stuff, I mean, I feel like that's just going to add like complications. But we are going to try to use Swift UI as much as possible, which should help, I guess, depending on how well Swift UI is implemented for Mac apps.
I mean, we've heard a lot of pain and suffering. I think what's kind of funny is like going in this particular project, we have so much experience in iOS. So I think a lot of people who come from Mac development kind of bemoan the limitations of SwiftUI. I mean, they bemoan SwiftUI regardless if you're iOS or Mac, but particularly Mac. But for us, it's all such fresh paint. Like, we're not going to know like what we're supposed to know about Mac development. So
I think if we get something working in 4 sprints, it's going to be thanks to SwiftUI taking care of like 80 or 90% of the UI issues that we would normally have. Because if we had to do this in AppKit, like that, the learning curve, I mean, there's no way. I don't think we get very far with it. Just if we had to do an AppKit and what's the other one called?
Catalyst.
Cross-platform. What?
Catalyst?
Yeah, Catalyst. I mean, that could do, but that's UI kit, right? Kind of more UI kit-ish. And it's like, I don't know. I have a feeling that if SwiftUI works well enough, it's going to help us focus on the things we really don't know anything about, and maybe like the core data stuff we were thinking of doing that might be issues, or trying to think about the specific Mac UI things that you have to make accommodations for, and not. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I want to make sure that we get done in the first sprint is just do a basic to-do, like create a core data model that is CloudKit synced, and then we do just a very basic Mac to iOS like syncing back and forth. Yeah. That would be like a very core experience. That could actually be done with, that technically already is capable. We can already do that if we've set the project to like use the template project. With core data sync and CloudKit sync.
I didn't check the box though for core data sync. We'll have to add that in.
Damn it, Steve. Yeah, no, I'll take care of that.
We can always copy and paste it.
Yeah, that shouldn't be too bad.
I kept it as clean as possible because I didn't know which direction we were going to go.
So adding core data to the project, core data CloudKit sync to the project would be the approach I would go with.
So we want a very, very basic. In 2 weeks, want to have something that we're recording. It doesn't have to have special great UI or anything, but something that's actually going to CloudKit, which is going to be fun because we're putting this on my account right now. So I have to log in and figure out CloudKit on that account. I did it once before with you, Kotaro, in like Side Project Saturday, and it was such a mess. I ended up with CloudKit was such a mess in the back end. I ended up with because of a demo app, Xcode made a database, and now I have like an extra one in there. You can never delete them. It's like it's such a freaking
it's all
mess.
based off of the bundle ID.
Yeah.
So that's where you run into a lot of the, like, you have to make sure that and it's hard. I don't know. I think you could delete the project, the container, but
I tried. I couldn't figure out a way to delete it.
Before you couldn't. Before that was like, it was just going to be there forever. I think now they have a way for you to remove that. But yeah, that was hell.
But yeah, so we're going to do this on my company, my LLC account that I have just for doing Apple stuff.
That's right. Then you can say you're a Mac and iOS developer once this whole thing is done.
I'm going to put that on my resume. Mac and iOS developer with a big old asterisk next to it. It's like, listen to the podcast, find out what I mean.
Fake it till you make it, baby.
I know, right? No, I think this is doable, and then we'll see if we actually got all this done, then we could always do more. But this seems like good starting points, as we know nothing about what we're doing. Well, almost nothing. We know a little bit. Nothing. We know just enough to be super dangerous.
Right. So we're getting close to time. But speaking of time, I would like to propose a unsponsored sponsor for this week's podcast.
Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor. Thank you.
That's the segment's name.
Our not a sponsor is today FinTimer. So you can find FinTimer at fintimer.com. FinTimer was created by our good colleague and friend Joe Chaplinsky, who would come to Philly Cocoa meetups a lot. Even though he used to live in New York, he would come down and hang out with us. So I just want to give a shout out to you, Joe Chaplinsky, for making such a wonderful timer app that we still use to this day.
I'm looking at it right now, and it's FinTimer, FIN timer.com. So no E.
And it is available for both the iPhone and the iPad. So yeah, I strongly recommend it. It has a great UI. It has great UX in terms of integration and interface. Once you figure out the gestures.
Yeah. I always he has a little help screen which helps me out every time I forget. The one thing I would say, I wish I had a Mac app, because I use it all the time for podcasting, not just us, but for another podcast. And it's great, but I wish I had a little window on my screen instead of my phone.
Right. Cool. So I think for now we have our general game plan for next week, or for this sprint: basic interface of getting a to-do task done. I think we also should probably figure out a very basic data model by that point. So those are the two key things that we want to get done for next sprint. And so with that, anything else anyone wants to add or suggestions or?
No, I like this. I think this is it's a good plan.
Okay, Aaron, it's a good plan, or?
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I don't know. I'll find out.
We'll find out.
That's part of the adventure of listening to this podcast. We're literally having the discussion with you all, kind of, over the internet here. So we actually did not plan the discussion that we just had in any great detail. We literally heard us coming to some conclusions there. So we're doing it live.
We're doing it live, like we do our code.
Right. Oh man!
Well, all right.
Oh, well, now we get to try Kotaro's new outro.
Yes. So here we go. Here, let me get this outro out of the way for us. Well, that's all we have for today. You can learn more about Philly Cocoa at phillycocoa.org. There you'll find links to our Slack, meetup schedule, and contact info. If you're feeling generous, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcast. And one more thing. Give a man a program, frustrate him for a day. Teach a man to program, frustrate him for a lifetime. Till next time, good luck with your own developer journey. We will cheer for you always.
Yes, that was awesome.
And that's a wrap. Make it till you make it, baby.